A new dawn, Halo Studios. Okay, so everyone's seen this video already. I'm late to the party here, right? There's nothing that I'm going to be able to say here that I think somebody hasn't already said. I've got like not a lot of new info to provide, but I think it's a big deal, right? It's a whole studio rebrand. And UE5, switch to UE5.
I can just be my authentic self, Chris.
For 6 years, I don't want to be in front of a camera.
Let's watch it. Is it loud? It sounds loud.
There's so much to do and so much fun to be had when you play Halo that I feel like I never run out of things to do.
Is the place crowded? At times it was, yeah.
Intricate stories that take place across lots of different worlds, have lots of different meaningful characters.
What made Halo successful at the beginning? What is the legacy of Halo, and what's the soul that we want to bring forward, and what's the craft of making Halo games, and how do we set our studio at best to go deliver on that?
No way.
We knew we had to make a change in order to take us into the future.
When I first heard about Halo,
and by change it means split from the 343 name entirely. Time to rebrand. All right, too much negativity.
I think
he said, hey, there's this thing called Project Foundry that I want to do. Let's make it happen.
It's not a game.
Foundry specifically is based around the same concept of the Foundry in Halo lore. It's the place where Halo rings are born.
Okay, before it shifts to this beautiful landscape, I wonder how long they've been working on this and like how extensive the resources were that were required to make this like pet project that's actually not a game. It's cool. This is beautiful, right? Like there's no denying that this is the best looking Halo graphics we've ever seen. It's not like
not a game.
Unprecedented. Like
for our studio. So
if you guys remember back in 2018 when they first demoed the Slipspace engine and we saw like wildlife and a beautiful landscape, like back then that was beautiful too. So, you know, I've been thrown off by this before and like sort of misled to believe that the graphics are going to be incredible. And then when it finally comes out, it's not exactly revolutionary, right? But without a doubt, like this is beautiful. You know, this is gorgeous. And everything we'd ever want from a landscape in Halo, you know? But it's a showcase, it's not the actual game, so like what's the game gonna look like? How long did it take to make this? Was this a good use of their time and resources? Chief looks badass here. He does look like a toy, you know? I've heard the sentiment around this. It kind of looks, and it's a still, right? He's like, obviously because he's still like this, it's like a toy kind of vibe. It's the CE Chief, which is a nod to Halo CE and to a reboot of the entire franchise. I wouldn't be surprised if they try to take that direction with it, considering they're rebranding the Halo Studios. It's like a fresh start. We're doing everything differently. You know, like they could definitely go that direction. I don't know if it's a good idea. No matter what they do with Halo, this franchise is wrapped up in so many expectations on what it should be or, you know, where it should go, you know, so like it's going to be difficult for them to do anything without criticism, you know, and without immense expectations. So if they want to reboot the franchise, start from the beginning, no easy feat, you know. Hard to imagine it would somehow be better, like from a storyline perspective.
Possible to make it really feel like you're on a hike.
Bring the dinos back? Yeah, sure.
The Cold Lands, which was the second biome that we took
7 FPS on it better not come out on the original Xbox One, dude. I'm done.
We could play with deformable landscapes and terrains. Unreal affords us more opportunity.
I mean, this is beautiful, you know?
You know, on the surface.
It was exciting watching this at Seattle in the venue, being in the crowd, surrounded by all that good energy and the hype, you know, like people were like screaming when we saw the graphics initially. Like that felt good. In that moment, I was super excited. Now I'm just kind of seeing it at home, and obviously it's still beautiful, but it's not a game, you know?
It might just look all like snow, but how many layers?
I think so. You said it should not come out on original Xbox One, that's for sure, right? That's always going to be a bottleneck. At the same time, though, the understanding that I've gotten from UE5 is that it's going to be easier for more complex processes, like higher level of like graphic detail and fidelity, I think will be achievable with less resources required on PC and on Xbox. And I think that means that like we'll probably get hopefully a better optimized game as well. Just the general performance of Infinite, I assume, would be smoother and more well optimized with UE.
Combined to really give that winter look.
And
without a doubt, this is a W, the shift, right?
Any land that's been completely taken over by the flood.
I wanted to give our team the opportunity to really express an alien world, a really alien world, taking something way further than they may have actually done in previous Halo games.
What's impressed me about watching the Halo team work in Unreal is how beautiful everything looks, how incredible the environments look.
I mean, hell yeah.
We've seen anything quite like it in Unreal.
This is how Halo looks like in my dreams, you know?
Fortunately, we have a studio that's really...
Yeah, I think so. What was the biggest issue with Infinite? Like, people like to dog on the gameplay and, like, anti-cheat or whatever, you know, various issues that people have with, like, the network, the servers. I think the biggest problem was the engine, you know, without a doubt. Like, a vast majority of their resources went to like building and reshaping this like 24-year-old engine, 23-year-old engine, right? Because there are still elements of that slipspace engine that were carried over from the original Halo CE engine, right? And their inability to succeed in creating what they wanted with this is the reason why this game just failed to be popular, right? Like the first 6 months, first year that we had for this thing to like really pop off, they had nothing for us. And that's because they were just, you know, spending all this time and energy trying to get the engine to like work when it was this big mixed web of code, and it just sounded like it was a mess, right? This whole thing about like hiring contract workers to like help build it and then removing them and adding new people who like didn't know how it worked to come in and like continue to build off it, just to sound like a, you know, a recipe for disaster, which is what it ended up being. The big thing with UE is like everybody, or most people, most developers have experience with UE, right? Without a doubt, like they're going to come in and they'll be trained more easily, more quickly. It's going to be easier to hire new employees. Everything about the game is going to be more scalable and more approachable. My biggest worry with the shift to UE is how is the game going to feel? I'm sure it'll look good. I'm sure we're going to get more updates in a more consistent basis. I would imagine theater mode is going to be like smoother, more one-to-one. I think for Forge, there's a ton of potential for Forge with UE to just build like something bigger and more graphically intensive while still performing well in the PC. Like I think that's huge. But the gameplay, right? Like the unique physics of Halo that you can't really find anywhere else, will it feel different? Like one of the big things about Halo's gameplay, I just keep pausing it, I'm sorry, but environment collision. The fact that in Halo, uniquely, like if it looks like you can jump on it, you can jump on it, which is something that you don't see in just about any other FPS game. Like in COD, for example, you'll see like an object jutting at a wall and you'll try to hit it and you'll just phase through it. And maybe like 20-30% of the objects are actually interactable. With Halo, it's like 80-90%. Like Infinite, they started pivoting away from it a little bit, but in the other Halo games, it was like, if it looks like you can stand on it, you can stand on it. And that's like the beauty of individual expression and creativity in Halo games, the way you navigate the environment and the intricate maps and designs and stuff, and the floaty physics, and like a nade blows up and you fly out in the air, like a ragdoll that happens when you melee somebody, right? Like just the sandbox interactions are unique and fun and hilarious at times. Will that carry over? You know, or will it play like fucking Overwatch or something, you know, like
forward together.
Foundry was an initiative that touched on every.
Can't that be coded? I hope so. I don't see why it couldn't. I'm just saying, like, it could feel a little bit different, and we might lose some of that player expression in the environment.
Creating an asset,
they were going to pay a lot of
now we can really
attention to nuances like physics and stuff. Yeah, for sure. I'm confident that they're aware of this stuff, so I just hope that they give it the love it deserves. Let's go, Billy. Welcome back.
Assets that we have, bring
Appreciate
them to
you, man.
life and bring them to today's standards.
Chief looking like a baddie.
We are really excited to be not just working on multiple projects, but also expanding.
Yeah, we just don't know what they're going to carry over. So they said they're working on multiple projects as well. What do we think of that, chat? And what do we think that means? Like, on one hand, it's exciting as hell because it's like, okay, I don't know if they showed the studio's rebrand. We know it's happening. Clearly, Microsoft sees Halo as a good investment, enough to pump, I assume, millions more money into it, and to have them split their focus into multiple projects and do them simultaneously. One big issue with Halo and the franchise, like in its relevance today, is the fact that it takes like 5 to 6 years for a freaking game to come out, right? Like Call of Duty comes out on an annual basis, and every game is, I mean, they're very similar, but the constant injection of new content and that explosion of like, oh, there's a new COD in November every year makes it relevant inevitably, right? Like Halo, if it wants to be relevant, we need to have multiple things happening with Halo at the same time, like a TV show, plus a new multiplayer experience, plus a campaign. Like part of me is thinking, we're never going to get Halo 3, the package that we got, ever again. It's just not feasible, unfortunately, today. Like, the way the industry works, everything is hyper streamlined. Everything is like, you know, like a vertical slice of multiplayer, few modes, and a campaign. You know what I mean? Like, we're never going to get the full package of Halo 3. So what we might get is a campaign on its own that's like open world and insane graphical fidelity, and like all the resources of that team on that project is just campaign. And then multiplayer. And the multiplayer might not be as graphically intensive or as exciting, but it's like hyper, you know, like the competitive side of it is dialed in, and they got an esports pro team giving them insights, you know, and they've got the good balance between casual competitive. they might just split everything into its own game, you know, like the multiplayer and the campaign.
Player, I think the
and
game's
Halo
only gonna
Wars.
get better when we get those
I hopefully not Forge. Like Forge and multiplayer are coupled experiences that you want to work hand in hand. So
franchise,
I don't know.
We are looking for new talent as the projects that we're working on kind of get further and further into their development.
An
cycle.
ODST, yeah, like storyline.
See that force multiplied as people come in and take on challenges.
TV show was not great. I know, but the fact that there was a TV show was good as far as like keeping Halo as a brand relevant, even if it was bad. Like you see, like any publicity is publicity, you know. But even if it was bad, like people were talking about Halo.
Creativity and your professional.
Obviously, we want a good show.
In that place.
We're looking for design.
That's a worry too. Is like if you split your focus to multiple projects simultaneously, then they can all come out ass. You know, like potentially, right? Like as opposed to like putting all your love and energy into like one big, confident release. But you could say the same thing about Infinite. Like Infinite, they poured $500 million apparently, and like they got like 500 employees, and it came out, you know, unfortunately the way that it did. Gameplay is solid. I got no issue with the gameplay, but you know, just they could not scale it. The engine was a mess.
We're looking for artists. We're looking for engineers.
It feels like a new beginning.
Why they kept delaying Forge instead of just launching it more pared down version and adding it over time? They kind of did though. They launched like the most fundamental version of Forge that they could a year later. That like my assumption is that if they had a product that they were confident in to get out, then they would have gotten it out earlier, you know. Like they probably unfortunately just took a while to like really get things going with the engine to the point where it was like stable enough to release to the public, you know. And I guess that when it came out, it was still more to an extent full featured than the Forge and like Halo 5, but they definitely built on it a lot after they released it.
We arrived now at a point where you
COD, I don't know. I think it's like own engine with Activision.
To start to believe in the process.
IW engine.
There's so much momentum.
Without a doubt, though,
right
UE
now,
is going to add so much more flexibility for the whole team to just do more exciting things with Halo.
This next phase of Halo.
The worlds that we're building, the stories that we're going after.
I think it would add modern gameplay elements, yeah.
Halo right
to
now
if they remake a CE. Which is without a doubt going to lead to criticism, right? Like if they go for the reboot, I wouldn't be surprised if they give us modern movement abilities in the reboot. It might not be as dramatic as like the curb slide, let's say, that sends you across the map, but like sprint, slide, clamber, those types of abilities. I don't know. Like I enjoy it personally. I know that there's like a large fan base that want it to be like identical to Halo 3. I think like it should never be that exactly. If you're going to take out sprint, you got to have something else, you know? Like I can play a Halo without sprint. But if I play a Halo without sprint, then it's got to have some other movement ability that makes it interesting and deep and exciting. Or you make a campaign, casual-focused Halo that like maybe doesn't have the mechanics, but the multiplayer should, in my opinion. Like, sorry, you know. We all have our preferences, and my preference is I'd rather have a game that has like depth and mechanics, you know, from a movement perspective. I think it's more fun. And I think that 343 have gotten Infinite to a point where it's like pretty dialed in and well-balanced and doesn't take away from the gameplay. Back in Halo Reach, back in Halo 4, I 100% agree. You know, sprint was terrible. It was shoehorned into the game. I wasn't a fan, but they dialed it in Halo 5. It was hyper competitive and enjoyable for me. I'm a competitive, you know, gamer. We all have different preferences. I like it the way it is. I got no issue with advanced mobility.
The last remnants of how we made Halo games in the past. That was our recipe. And what we are doing right now, we're changing that recipe.
Changing everything. There was a tweet that I saw from a past developer. Maybe I'll grab it later or something, but like, a developer who worked on the original Halos, and he had like mentioned that this quote, when he heard this quote, this was why he thinks that like the old Bungie devs and whatnot will not be like brought back into the studio. Marcus Lato, that's who it was, who's like, yeah, this tells me that they're probably not going to, you know, bring back the old devs.
Recipe. And what we are doing right now, we're changing that recipe.
Changing everything. Right? It's like, that's like a nod to like, this is a brand new era of Halo, and we're doing it in a completely new way. You know, and hopefully we like it. The thing is like, if you don't like advanced mobility in Halo, you hate the direction that Halo has gone for the last like decade. I'm sorry, but I don't think you're probably going to continue to not like where it's going from a gameplay standpoint. I think we've gotten to a point with the gameplay where a lot of people actually really appreciate and enjoy it. I'd be surprised if they do a full pivot back to the classic style of gameplay, because there's enough positive sentiment around it to kind of just keep going and keep refining and finding new things within that category. So like if you're very strict about the gameplay and you think it's going to suddenly go back to like Halo 3, I don't know, I wouldn't get your hopes up too high. I think from like a optimization standpoint, like the frequency of new content, the I don't know how bad cheating is on UE Engine, but I just think like a lot of other external elements, like the network, hopefully will be better. I think all of those things will be more solved and more consistent and stable with this new engine. We're going to get more content on a more regular basis. Like that's all a W, you know. As far as like the core gameplay though, I assume that 343 is going to, you know, continue building off of what they've been doing for like the last decade and not removing sprint entirely. They'd have something, you know. It's a long conversation and it's all preference in the end of the day. Like we've gotten to a point where Infinite's gameplay is good, and there's a lot of positive things you can say about it, and there's positive things you can say about Classic Halo as well. So it really is just down to preference. It's not like one is terrible and one is good, you know? I don't mind Sprint. Everything else is bad, but that's just me. Yeah, but we can get into a long conversation about why Clamber actually can add to and make gameplay exciting in a lot of situations, even though like you might not like how Clamber works or like puts your gun down, etc. There are a lot of good arguments about how it adds like skill and interactivity and player expression on the maps in ways that the classic movement didn't. And that's it. That's really all there is to say about this, I think, right? I think this is nothing but a W if you're a Halo fan. Like, this is a reason to be optimistic about the future. It is not proof that Halo is going to get better or it's going to suddenly be good, because they can absolutely screw this up. So don't, like, get your hopes up to the point where you're like, oh my god, Halo is back. Like, the Halo is back tweets. I haven't seen them, thankfully. But, like, being optimistic about the future and knowing that Microsoft still sees this as a valuable franchise and that they're pumping millions into it, that's a big W. You know, that's a reason to have some excitement for sure. But, you know, temper your expectations. We have no freaking idea where it's going to go, but I'm definitely feeling better about the next year. We got the new season of HCS, which is exciting. Another $1 million World Championship. I hope we have like 5 events. I hope we get a Toronto event. But yeah, like I'm here, you know, like I'm locked in for the next year. I want to get bigger and better with the content and with the grind, and just hope that all things look up and that Halo becomes more accessible and exciting to everybody, right? Like, throw it on PlayStation, you know? It better come out and be on PlayStation and Xbox, as long as it's not like bottlenecked by like the old Xbox graphics or some shit like that, you know? Make it accessible to as many people as possible, and, you know, make it exciting, and people are going to come in droves. Give it a battle royale. Have a side project for the battle royale, for the competitive multiplayer, whatever. Stuff that people want to play and will gravitate towards while keeping it fresh and keeping it Halo, you know? Like, I think that's all I could say.